I've moved beyond your mission. I'm free.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel just announced that Ultron is returning in live action for the new Vision series, and James Spader is coming back to play the character again. The Hollywood trades that were reporting this information also said that Elizabeth Olsen would be coming back as Scarlet Witch during the series as well. I know there's been a bunch of questions about Ultron coming back in live action. They were originally going to bring him back for that Iron Man Armor Wars TV series, which then got turned into a movie and now might have actually been canceled quietly behind the scenes. So it makes sense why he'd be free now to join the upcoming Vision series. He's such a huge part of Vision's storyline, so we'll break it all down. We actually have a lot of information about what their plans for Ultron was in the next couple of years based on what they were doing previously. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Marvel's been dropping all kinds of trailers left and right, so I've been trying to do videos for everything. But if you've been keeping up with all the extra stuff Marvel has been doing with the characters outside of the movies, you've probably already seen Ultron come back in live action. They brought him back a couple times since Avengers Age of Ultron. Most people think of the Infinity Ultron who got all the Infinity Stones during What If Season 1. But Marvel also did a completely separate live-action one-off for a separate Disney Wish event where they brought a bunch of the live-action characters in to fight the normal, non-Infinity Stone-powered Ultron who had returned.
Ah, so this is where they keep the children.
That's a weird opening line. Think fast!
The funny thing about that one-off is that even though it was brief and not really part of the movies that they were releasing at the time, like this is a couple years old, a lot of those characters will return in Avengers 5 Doomsday and Secret Wars, and some of them will be part of that new Avengers team when it forms in the next few years. The bigger news you probably saw in your feeds recently is that James Spader is coming back as Ultron specifically for the White Vision series first. They're just calling it the Vision series. It used to be called Vision Quest, but that's not the official title anymore. They're going to start filming that early next year, probably releasing it in 2026 at some point. They didn't say if it's going to be before Avengers 5 Doomsday or after, but I'm going to guess that it'll be after, so I don't know if that means that it's going to be set on Battleworld or how they're going to handle that. I talked about that in my previous video because it sounds like Spider-Man 4 will also release between Avengers movies. There's a couple ways that Marvel can deal with that on a story level where like TV series and movies releasing between those two Avengers films have to contend with the idea that everybody's on Battleworld and there is no multiverse anymore. And one of the ways is that they don't address it except in like a post-credit scene. Like literally just completely swerving on the problem. So you have to imagine that when the White Vision series picks up in episode 1, they'll just do their own story, then maybe in like a post-credit scene they'll tie it to what's happening in the Avengers movies, because Vision will come back in Avengers 5 and in Avengers 6 Secret Wars. They've changed what it was originally going to be about. It was announced a couple years ago. You might remember they announced a whole bunch of WandaVision spin-offs, but in the new announcement where they said that James Spader is coming back as the character, they're still calling it the third part in a WandaVision trilogy, with Agatha all along being part 2. I assume that means that they're not counting Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness as part of that. Otherwise, it'd be part 4 of a 4-part story. But originally, the series was meant to be more the Tom King Vision story from that Vision comic book, which they kind of borrowed a little bit from for WandaVision already. And they were going to use it to introduce a couple of characters. I think the adult version of Tommy was also going to come back during that too, because we have the adult version of Billy coming back on the Agatha series. So it makes sense that Scarlet Witch's other child comes back during the other WandaVision spinoff. But a couple years ago, Marvel had their big come to Jesus moment. They completely changed the way they're releasing stuff, make all the Deadpool Marvel Jesus jokes that you want.
Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point.
They've since completely changed their strategy for how they're treating all the Marvel stuff on Disney+. I'll explain that later in the video. But as part of all those changes a couple years ago, Kevin Feige hired a brand new showrunner for the White Vision series. They haven't given it an official title yet, so now we're just calling it the Vision series. But the new showrunner you might recognize is Terry Matalas from Star Trek Picard Season 3. Absolute banger of a season of television. You can skip the first 2 seasons of Picard. Just watch Season 3. It's sort of like the Next Generation's true finale. Kevin Feige said that that was the reason specifically that he was hired, because he watched Picard Season 3, and apparently Kevin Feige is a huge Next Generation stan and thought it was an absolute banger of a season. So he's like, please come work for us, run this show. If you haven't seen it, it actually is really good, so I do think this bodes well for the Vision series. Like, he is a really good showrunner, so I do think he can actually do a good job with the characters. But it's meant to pick up a little while after White Vision took off at the end of WandaVision to just stew in his memories and his feelings that he'd recently gotten back from Hex Vision. If it wasn't clear, White Vision is basically the original Vision who died during Avengers Infinity War. After the final battle in Avengers Endgame, his body was recovered by a sword because it was worth billions of dollars, like it's full of vibranium already by itself. Even without the underlying technology behind Vision inside his body, he would be priceless. They tried to reactivate him and use him as the ultimate weapon. Tyler Hayward learned that they couldn't do it without Scarlet Witch's chaos magic power. So everything he did during the first half of that WandaVision series was in service of gaslighting her to cause her to use her chaos magic so that they could siphon some of it off and reactivate Vision. When they did that, they blocked all of his former memories and emotions, so that's why he came back white. Also, he didn't have the Mind Stone, and that was such a huge part of his consciousness that he basically came back as this mindless robot. When they sent him into the Hex to kill Scarlet Witch in order to bring down the Hex because they didn't need her anymore, like they gotten what they needed out of her, inside the Hex Vision that Scarlet Witch created whole cloth using her chaos magic had all of Vision's former memories up to the point that he died and basically just transferred those back to the original White Vision. Sort of like a backup hard drive USB copy-paste situation, so it should always be a reminder to back up your data. The reason why it's such a big deal that James Spader is coming back as Ultron, if you didn't realize, James Spader has not done any new Ultron stuff since Avengers Age of Ultron. Anytime you've heard Ultron in any of the trailers, it's really them just like picking clips out of Avengers Age of Ultron and putting them in other context. He's never recorded any brand new Ultron stuff. Anytime you've heard brand new Ultron stuff, it's actually been Ross Marquand who took over after Avengers Age of Ultron. Most notably for What If Season 1, because there was a lot of Ultron during that, and that special live-action Avengers event. You can kind of tell the difference between their voices if you listen closely. This is James Spader's Ultron, then this is what Ross Marquand's Ultron sounds like.
I turned that key and dropped this rock a little early, and it's still billions dead.
So many universes, so much chaos.
Some of you also might recognize Ross Marquand as the voice of Red Skull. He did Red Skull during Infinity War and Endgame. It wasn't Hugo Weaving coming back. He was actually kind of salty about that. And Ross Marquand also does Professor X on X-Men 97. So Ross Marquand just all over the Marvel Universe, but he does a lot of voiceover. He's also on the Invincible TV series as the Immortal too. If you've been watching my channel for a long time too, I used to do Walking Dead videos every week. You probably remember him as Aaron from Walking Dead. But it's a huge deal that they're finally going back to the original and getting James Spader to come back for authentic Ultron in live action again. I think it's because they're treating it as a much bigger deal, like let's go back to the source. But the big reason they're bringing Ultron back during the Vision series is because he's such a huge part of his origin story and he's reckoning with his past, like he's just got all his memories back and he's starting to reckon with everything that's happened to him. You remember that Vision is the baby of Jarvis and Ultron. Paul Bettany, who plays Vision, originally started out just doing the voice for Jarvis's AI in the first Iron Man movie. So the whole idea with this new Vision series at Ultron is that they need James Spader to record brand new Ultron scenes that we haven't seen before. What that means is we'll probably see a couple different versions of Ultron show up, like we'll see Vision remembering him having interactions with Ultron during Avengers Age of Ultron with scenes that we didn't see on screen, like new stuff, but from the past. Vision remembering Ultron, then in present day Ultron's code reactivating and him actually coming back, like brand new present day Ultron stuff. If it wasn't clear, Ultron was not killed during Avengers Age of Ultron, his code just went dormant. His code has basically been stored dormant inside Tony Stark's stuff ever since Avengers Age of Ultron. So during Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, there's like a stick with Ultron's code on it just stewing in one of his lockers. Don't you wonder what happened to all those other AIs that Tony Stark had? What they'll also probably do is yoink some of the plot from the Armor Wars movie that they had originally intended on doing for Ultron. Originally, he was supposed to return during Armor Wars for the first time, like it would have been his grand return to the actual live-action movies and shows. But Armor Wars was going to be a completely different type of story, completely different beast. That would have been an adaptation of the original comic book Armor Wars, but with Rhodey being the main character instead of Iron Man. Remember, he had just come back after Secret Invasion. The idea is that Iron Man's technology had gotten into the hands of a bunch of really shady people all over the globe, kind of like it does during the original comic book Armor Wars, and Rhodey would have had to deal with that. The actual main villain of the series, just like in the comic book, would have wound up being the government, but in the case of the Armor Wars movie, it would have been Damage Control because they are a department of the government now. In the original comic book, the government basically creates its own giant armor that Iron Man has to destroy. So in the movie, it would have been Rhodey having to destroy some giant creation that Damage Control accidentally creates, and through that, Ultron's code would have reasserted itself, and that's how he would have come back. Like Damage Control and Val would have accidentally led to the return of Ultron. Now it sounds like the first place he comes back is this Vision series, and he just resurfaces from inside Vision. Like there's pieces of Ultron's code buried inside Vision's programming, which I think makes a little more sense. Like there's still pieces of him that make up what Vision is essentially, so it makes sense that Ultron would be able to resurface inside Vision somehow. As for Marvel's brand new Disney Plus strategy, what they used to do and what was not working during Marvel Phase 4 was the idea that they were introducing a whole lot of characters and concepts on Disney Plus and expecting those to drive people into movie theaters. The problem with that is that a lot of casual fans treated that like homework, and they felt like they had to do all this homework in order to understand what was happening in the movies, and it wasn't really driving people into theaters. So what they're doing now, like their new strategy, is to use the big movies to drive people the opposite direction to Disney Plus, where like they introduce really big concepts and characters, get people excited about them in the movies first, then they get people really excited to follow their continuing stories on Disney Plus, kind of like they did with WandaVision initially, like Scarlet Witch and Vision, really big movie characters, like Avengers characters that people got excited to see their continuing story on Disney Plus. So generally when it comes to Disney Plus stuff in like the next several years, I would expect to see more of that kind of energy from the series that they're doing. There are a couple exceptions to that, like Daredevil, for instance, started out as a TV show and it's just continuing as a banger of a TV show. But a really good comparison to make is that they're not doing a lot of what they did with like the Echo series, for instance, like a small one-off character that they introduced in a TV series that already wasn't that big of a character on that TV series to begin with. Generally, I think it's a smarter move for them long term, like just lead with their strongest stuff, like really cool stuff that people love in the movie theaters, then just continue that where it makes sense on Disney Plus. But everybody let me know in the comments, what do you want them to do with Ultron after the Vision series going forward in the MCU if he sticks around? And it sounds like he will stick around in some form. Speaking of all the big Marvel trailers that they've been dropping recently, I just did a big Marvel Phase 6 trailer. It has footage from like a bunch of upcoming movies and TV series. Click here for that video, and click here to watch Robert Downey Jr. talk about exactly why he came back as Doctor Doom and what's going on with that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.